президент Трамп и его команда, особенно после встречи на Аляске, гораздо глубже стали подходить к урегулированию этого кризиса, понимая, что необходимо устранить первопричины, о чем мы, президент Путин, постоянно говорили. И одна из этих первопричин как раз проблема безопасности России, связанная с тем, что грубейшим образом в течение десятилетий последовательно нарушались дававшиеся нам обязательства не допустить расширения НАТО на восток. Президент отмечал несколько раз о том, что после этих обещаний было 5 волн расширения НАТО.
You know, Patrick, that was interesting to me because Lavrov says in that piece, Trump understands the necessity to eliminate the root causes. And that's since the Alaska meeting. So now he understands to eliminate them. Boy, you wouldn't think so from hearing what he said coming out, what he said yesterday. You wouldn't think he does really understand it. And then maybe it's just, it's just diplomatic cover, and it's hard to explain it and be the man about diplomacy. So I understand that. But boy, oh boy, it sure does not seem that he understands that the importance of eliminating the root causes.
No, I think you're right there, Gary. I think it is diplomatic cover. I think Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, is being, I think, gracious. He's being generous to Trump, and the Russians are pragmatic. They're not going to. They want to encourage Donald Trump to go in the right direction, even if he flips next week. Russia's always, and stubbornly so, had an open door policy, and something that really frustrates the hawks in Russia.
Yeah, indeed.
An open door diplomatic, no matter how things get, that door is always open. But that is the Russian way, and it's always going to be like that. They even have the same policy with Ukraine. Believe it or not, as bad as things are with Ukraine, that door is always open for Ukraine. And whether they're going to take advantage of that is another matter. But when you're talking about the root causes, why this is essential, and why it's essential for, I think, the U.S. to grasp it, but more importantly for the Europeans to find the smelling salts on this, is because there can be no political settlement at all, if the parties that are negotiating, main party being Russia, and whoever is across the table, whether it's Ukraine, Europe, or America. If they don't agree on how they got there, like what were the things that brought us to the conflict, if they can't agree and acknowledge these realities, then there's no chance for a political settlement. Zero. It's not going to happen. Russia's not going to say, "Oh, yeah, forget about all that from the Maidan and the shelling of the Donbas and the 14,000 dead and all the rest of the stuff. Forget about that. A NATO enlargement, it's not a problem. We just so tired of fighting. We just want peace. Give us a deal." It's not going to happen. You can't have so the causes, what they call the root causes, are completely tied to any chance of a political settlement. Period. End of story. There's no way around it. There's no amount of mental gymnastics they can play in media gymnastics to get around that hard truth. Russia knows that, and all they're doing is waiting for them to come to the table to talk real. And until that, and Donald Trump's kind of, made a one step forward in Alaska by acknowledging this ceasefire is ridiculous, and to get straight to negotiations and a political negotiated settlement. That's a good first step. Definitely. But it's going to take more than that going forward. The particulars on this are particularly important because a lot of these, the NATO membership, of course, is a huge pillar. It seems like there's an acknowledgement by Trump by some of these statements. I hope that that's off the table for Ukraine. But then there's also the issue of the new regions. And we hear Gary talk about land swaps. Everyone's saying all of a sudden land swap. Where's the Russian conversation on land swaps? I haven't heard it.
We don't know if they did actually have that conversation. We don't know about it.
We don't know. We just know that maybe Witkoff had said this to somebody in the media or somebody, and that all of a sudden it's a thing. And I've not seen anything in any of the Russian commentary on this, any of the reportage or statements by anybody on the Russian side. So it's like and that's so typical because it's floating out the idea that Russia's willing to give concessions,
Right.
Land concessions, and of course that makes it sound like Trump's pulled a miracle there by squeezing a land swap out of there somehow. Now I could be wrong. Maybe like the magic man Steve Witkoff is going to come there dangling a land swap at some point next week. But haven't seen it yet. So I have to assume if I haven't seen it, if I'm going to put my money down by trusting, rumors in Washington and the Trump orbit, and then the fact that there's no evidence of it on the Russian side, I'm probably going to bet on the Russian side for now until I see it. Until I see it, and I haven't seen it.
No, and the fact that Lavrov is now recognizing, okay, Trump's made this effort and he's doing what he's doing, and then he says he believes that Trump understands. The fact that now they're toying with the idea of describing NATO, so differently now. No, there's not going to be any admittance into the country, into the organization, but yet they're talking about NATO protections at the same time. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of repeating myself. Is it to think that there's any chance in hell that this redefining of protections and security guarantees, that it's like it's NATO, but it's not NATO, and that's going to fly. And it's funny. Later on in that same interview, Lavrov said, well, how about security guarantees for Russia? How about what the very thing that we that this war has been based upon, getting back to the root causes of demilitarization and denazification? How about our security guarantees? And he just left that out there. That's we're talking about the Ukraine's guarantees. How about us?
Yeah, or security concerns is how the Russians frame that. Right. They're not asking for guarantees. Obviously, the guarantee will come in the form of a treaty, a peace treaty at the end of it. But look at so where's the statement that we're not going to do this $100 billion arms deal where the U.S. is going to sell arms to the Europeans via a NATO mechanism? Like, where that certainly would be one you could put up there, saying, this is not going to help to flood Ukraine with weapons. So we're going to knock that on the head, put that off the side. Don't worry, Russia. That's on permanent hold, as a signal and a symbol to the Russians saying we're serious now. We're not going to be flooding Ukraine with weapons. So that you're already into the demilitarization conversation with Ukraine, and Russia would like to see a neutral Ukraine. And I think any sensible, in fact, Ukraine's neighbors want to see, I'm sure Hungary would prefer a neutral Ukraine. I'm sure Slovakia, I'm sure the people of Romania would, even if the CIA-controlled government doesn't want a neutral Ukraine. I think the people would. But so that's happening during all of this. That deal is still going forward. So that's real policy. That's real action. It's not rhetoric. That's actually happening. And then we have Ukraine announcing they're going to this $50 billion investment from the West to build drones in Ukraine. Yeah, it's like, good luck with that. How you get insurance on that factory against Kinshal missiles? I don't think so. And then Macron saying just the last 2 days, there should be no limits to the size of the Ukrainian military. So he's over there pretending to talk peace in Washington, and on the other side of his mouth, arm Ukraine. They need a bigger military force. They need more weapons. So that's not. And then on top of that, Gary, while this is going on, what are the Ukrainians doing? Well, everything in their power to derail negotiations. They struck a Russian pipeline, and now have cut off supplies of Russian oil that was going through Ukraine to supply Hungary and Slovakia, right? A terrorist attack against infrastructure, oil infrastructure. Of course, we've seen plenty of that around Europe. So Ukraine's clearly not serious about any peace negotiations. So there's so many things. So bottom line here is this, and I think this is the main concept. No matter what Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin agree to, in principle, on paper, or whatever, There's nothing to stop the Europeans, the UK, Germany, France, von der Leyen and Brussels and whoever from sabotaging it, undermining it, ignoring it. And there's nothing, of course, to stop the Ukrainians from doing that. And who are they working with to carry out these raids? Are they working with U.S. intelligence? Are they working with British intelligence? So is this a case of we having a conversation on the political level, but on the deep state and intel level, you're having active measures and operations going on and militarily that are clearly going to undermine any negotiated settlement or ceasefire if there was ever such a chance of that happening. So there's nothing Trump can do. You can't control these or get them to come on side in any kind of collective effort. It's just not going to happen. So it's a dead letter.
Yeah,
it's a dead letter at the end of the day. Having said that, Gary, I still think that they need to keep this top line diplomacy going because it's excellent optics, and it might end up putting pressure on the Europeans and Zelensky to stop, around with the situation. And that's good. I hope we can see more of this. There's already Lavrov confirmed, Russian Foreign Ministry just recently, that last 24 hours that there is now a meeting booked and arrangements are being made for Donald Trump to come to Moscow.
Oh, that is it's in play.
Yeah. So again, positive. We like this. And if Trump can keep his discipline in his rhetoric, then that can also be positive. And maybe this is the way forward, is just to, rather than, because Russia's not isolated if they're meeting with the U.S. Now, there's no isolation of Putin and Russia. So, but Europe and Zelensky could become isolated if this relationship keeps improving between Washington and Moscow.
I love your idea of putting that latest military tranche that's going into Ukraine from NATO, bought from us, but going to them, putting that on hold. I think that would be an excellent sign. I love that.
That would be huge. Yeah,
huge.
And that's the kind of show of goodwill. Without making a commitment either way, but just say we're putting that on hold. That shows you're serious, and that's going to make Russia more engaged. And it's also going to put a lot of pressure on these European leaders that are very hawkish in their own way, respectively, and of course on Zelensky, who shouldn't even be in office, in Ukraine. And that's another problem we don't want to get into.
That's a whole nother show. Come on.